Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lamson, and I'm super excited for y'all to join me on episode 19. That's right, we're one away from 20, and this one's epic. I bring another SERE brother into the community on this one. We dive deep into just the SERE Tech School alone, the toughness about it, the grit you have to have. I bring one of my teammates on, Tyler Pitcher, who's currently in the military right now, so he's still in active duty for 18 years. Just a badass guy. So humble and so approachable. Some of the things we talk about, deeds and actions, not through words, needs of others, trust, shelter and shower your team. We also, like I said, we just talk a lot about tech school for SERE. So if you're curious on what it's like, you want to hear some funny stuff, this is a great episode to learn about it as well. If you guys take away any leadership traits, save, share, follow, comment, provide some feedback. Go follow the Non-Standard Podcast. Hit me up on Instagram. Manny Mustache with any questions you guys have. Other than that, we're 1 minute in. Let's get you to this episode right now. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining this episode. I'm super pumped to have a call with one of the few who have known me the longest in the military, going on literally 18 years, since about 2006. And just like you heard in the intro, is my man Pitcher. We're just going to jump right into it, man. So, for those listening, and like you've heard before, we always start with the 3 H's. And like I say before, I got the 3 H's from a friend who went into an interview, and that was what he was asked. And he brought that to me. I was like, dude, that's a great way to start a conversation. Gets the juices going, lets people know who's out there. And so it's hometown, a couple heroes, and a hardship. And Pitcher, I'll let you jump into that. And then after, we'll get into your career so everybody can see what a badass you are and how you're out there just doing the best you can. And we'll get it going, man. All right, what you got for us?
First, man, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Super stoked to see where you're at and how everything's going for you. So, thanks for dragging me along. Getting started, the 3 H's, hometown. I'm from what used to be a small town, Layton, Utah. Grew up there 18 years. All my family's still there. Got a huge family. That definitely contributed to the culture in which I was raised and that outdoor lifestyle and spend a lot of time with family. And to answer the question that won't get asked, yes, I am Mormon. So.
Check, Utah, cool.
Yeah. Usually people are like, where are you from? Like, Utah. And yes. So, because that's definitely the next question they're thinking or asking. To expand on that a little bit more, I'm the youngest of 7. So, I definitely fit the bill. Anyway. And I have 37 nieces and nephews, just so we're clear. Bro. And then heroes. I think the easy one that is probably pretty common is father, right? My dad's definitely my hero. So my dad's story is crazy, right? He's the oldest of 11. And as the oldest of 11, his dad was never around. His dad left his mom early on. And so filling that role, that fatherly, that paternal role within that family, he essentially cared for all of his brothers and sisters, all 11 of them. He had a job, multiple jobs at such an early age that really shaped who he was and the type of man that he was. And that's something that he instilled in me. Being the youngest, whatever, it was just, we're learning the work ethic, right? It doesn't matter what the job is, the job has to get done. We are not too good for any job. It doesn't matter what it is, we just do it, right? And so he always instilled that in me, right? So that's, at the time, I didn't appreciate it, right? Because getting up early on the weekends and pulling weeds, mowing yard, doing yard work, that was never fun, but it definitely instilled those habits early on to shape me into the person that I am and the father that I am. A lot of those things you really don't realize until later on in life when you find yourself parenting your children and you're like, that's my dad all day, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm just now, we're seeing that too. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't help it. But to further highlight that, like I always viewed my dad as Superman, there's a whole lot that goes into like shaping that persona that I had of my father. But one of them would be, I think I was like 7 years old, and he was doing work on the house. He was up on our two-story home up on top of a ladder fixing the air conditioning unit, and he fell off the ladder and landed straight on his head and neck on the concrete on our driveway. And I remember running around to the front, seeing my dad laying there, like trying to get up, and all this blood is just rushing down the driveway into the gutter. And it was thick like paint, as a little kid. It was wild, right? But ambulance came, picked him up, took him to the hospital, and next day he was home walking around, no neck brace, no nothing. It was just like, he's an animal, right? I mean, a real Superman only fell off a horse. My dad fell off a 2-story roof and was fine, That might be insensitive, but I'm joking, obviously. So yeah, like dad's number one. And then hardship. Oh man, that one requires some thought, but I would say probably the one that stands out most, right? This meets multiple categories. And because oftentimes the hardships are often associated with our greatest triumphs and the things that we're most proud of, I will say I got married at a week after my 18th birthday, right? To my beautiful wife. And so being married at that age is extremely difficult. Again, as I said previously, it's certainly the most rewarding. So we've been married for 21 years at this point. And that's something that I'm super proud of, right? So we had a baby super young. My wife was in college. I was in high school. And so we got married super young and started our life early.
Yeah.
And so that sets your path, essentially, right? You can either buck up and face the situation, or you can not. And I chose the previous. So a couple days after I graduated, I got married in high school a week after my 18th birthday in March of 2003. And a week after I graduated high school, her dad showed up to my house and we drove to Texas, right? From Utah to Texas. And that's where we started really our life together. And our daughter was born shortly after that. So from that point, it was, balancing multiple jobs. And then when my wife finally gave birth to our daughter, that was certainly an emotional moment, because we're sitting in the hospital, and everything's going fine. And then Sunny, my wife, goes unconscious briefly, right? And I'm looking at the monitor, trying to understand what's going on. As an 18-year-old kid, you don't know anything about this, None of my family's there. Her parents are there. But bear in mind, this is a very fresh relationship with her parents as well. So anyway, as this is going on, the heart rate monitor for my daughter bounces up to 222 beats per minute. Doctors immediately rush into the room, start prepping my wife for surgery, and tell me, like, hey, you need to give your wife a kiss because this may be the last time you see her. And I was like, holy smokes, right? The baby may not make it. My wife may not make it. This is what they're telling me. And so as I'm like, she's barely conscious. She's barely aware what's going on. My wife is. And I'm trying to tell her, I love you. I love you. Like, everything's going to be okay, and give her a kiss and whatnot, as they're wheeling this bed out of the hospital room and leaving me in this room. And at that moment, I am completely alone in this room. And although it was silent, it was deafening silence, right? Because you're left there with your thoughts and you're just kind of dealing with that. So that was a tough moment, right? That's a pretty significant hardship. And I'll say it didn't necessarily ease up from there, right? So we bounced around. We moved from one place to the next. Lived in like government housing, controlled income, places next door to us in the housing units that we were living in. It was meth labs, police raids all the time. I was doing like a 120-mile commute every day. It was brutal, right? Until finally we moved back to Utah, and I was working three jobs: construction, selling cell phones, and working for America Online, if you know what that is. And my dad told me, he was like, "Hey, this is not sustainable. You know, you have a high school education and you have a family. Like you got to make some changes here." And he was like, "You're working hard, but you need to consider joining the military." And I was like, "Okay." So, and then the rest is history, you know. Ended up joining the Air Force, and yeah, it took off. So that's where I linked up with you.
I was on the exact opposite side of the spectrum when it came to career life choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, man. So joining the military. Did your family have military background? Obviously you said your dad brought it up, but did you grow up with any of it? I don't know if the military is big in the Mormon community. I don't know. From my perception, I grew up in a pretty big Mormon town in Northern California, and I didn't see it as that. But did you, like, what was that like when he was just like, "Dude, you joined the military"? Were you like, "I don't even know what that is"? Like,
Yeah. So kind of, in the community that I lived in, there was a military base there. So Hill Air Force Base is right there.
Okay. Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so while it was present, it was never really a thought that I had to join the military. My dad worked at Hill Air Force Base. He was a GS employee for 48 years when he retired, But, and he was briefly in the Marine Corps early on when he was younger. But it was never a discussion that he and I had about me joining the military or anything like that. It wasn't even something I necessarily considered, even though the school I went to was less than a mile down the road from me. So it was never a planned out thing for me to join the military. I had never really even considered it, But I would say in the Mormon community, like in SERE, there's a fair bit of Mormons rolling around in there, and some of them are not far from where I grew up, and then some are from various.
Yeah, I think Nichols was Mormon, wasn't he? Yeah, yep. Brady Nichols. Yeah.
Yep. Brady Nichols, Dave Spring.
Okay, Spring. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bunch going through there. So that was always weird. And then that always became like an inside joke, like Mormons are infiltrating the survival career field to prepare for the last days, which is funny. I love it. I embrace that for sure. But yeah, so touching on that piece a little bit, when he told me the military, it was not join the Air Force or anything like that. It was talk to everybody and see what the best option is. So I initially went to the Marine Corps, right? Because he was in the Marine Corps, although he was like, hey, the best way to go is Air Force, right? Yeah. It's most family friendly and so forth. All the things they say about the Air Force are true. Anyway, so Marines were like, hop up on that pull-up bar. And at the time I was doing bodybuilding and powerlifting and all that stuff, I was 235, 245 at the time.
Yeah.
And they're like, do 10 pull-ups. So I crank out my pull-ups and they're like, that's E2, man. That's E2. So I was like, I don't even know what that means, but okay. And they're like, do 50 push-ups. So I crank out the push-ups. They're like, that's E3, dude. You're going to graduate basic as E3. I was like, this is great, man. I'm just getting promoted for working out. This is my dream.
I love this.
Yeah. So, I sign up, or I sign up for the ASVAB. And the recruiter takes me down to take the ASVAB. And there was some shady stuff going on with that. He was like trying to give me pills and stuff. And I was like, no, not going to do that. He's like, it'll help you focus for the test. I was like, nah, dude. Anyway, so I go in, take the test. A couple days later, go back to him, and he was like, "Yeah, you can pick whatever job you want, blah 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 blah, but we're Marines first." Well, I eventually decided, like, "Hey, Marines not for me," and they were super upset. They're like, "Get out of here, nerd!" Blah, blah, yelling at me, and I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So I talked to the Army, decided the Army wasn't for me. Talked to the Navy, didn't want to do the Navy, and finally went and talked to the Air Force recruiter. And she treated me like she had better things to do, right? She didn't have time for me. While the other ones were like, "Oh, yes, give me more, give me more." And she was like, "Yeah, I don't care." So anyway, I walk in there and she's like, "I'm busy, but you can take a seat and I'll be with you when I can." And I was like, "Okay." So I picked up, she had a pamphlet sitting on her desk. And the intent was to tell her, like, "Hey, I'm not interested in joining the military. I'm not going to do this," right? So she's got this pamphlet on there. And I pick it up, and it's the pamphlet that probably you saw with Chief Mizell hiding in the bush with camo paint on his face. And I was like, "What? This is cool." And I start like flipping through it, reading it, and I was like, "Yes, this is it." And she walks out, and I was like, "Hey, I'll sign right now if I can have this job." And she was like, "Where'd you get that?" And I was like, "On your desk." And she was like, "I've never seen that before in my life." I was like, "Okay, well, this is what I want to do." And she was like, "Well, I don't know what it is, so come back tomorrow and I'll bring the regional lead recruiter down here." So come back the next day and they were like, "Hey, we've never signed anybody up for this. So we're going to figure this process out together." And I was like, "All right." So, do the whole PT test and all the other evals and all that. And yeah, got picked up for that. And then I was in the depth for 14 months before they got me a class start date. So
yeah, I was pretty similar. I was in debt for about almost a year after I graduated high school, waiting for a SERE slot because it was guaranteed when I got it. The only reason I went SERE was obviously I got out of high school. My dad was like, or I was like, "Hey, I want to join the military." We had a recruiter. I saw an Army guy. He's like, "Hey, join the Air Force." I was like, "Cool." I took the ASVAB. It was horrible. They were like, "Dude, you can have like open general or open mechanic." I told my dad. He's like, "No, let's find something that's guaranteed." So we go there. He tells me about PJ, SERE, and I think CCT at the time. I was like, "Cool, what's PJ? You do this. We do the swim." I'm like, "No, what's next?" Because I hated swimming. He's like, "Well, you do the SERE when it's like 200 meters, no time limit, just survive the swim." I was like, "Oh, okay." My recruiter was same boat. Didn't know much about it. I grew up next to an Air Force base in Northern California. I didn't even know Beale was there until about 10 years in the military. I was an hour from Beale, and I never knew it was there until I had friends that were like, "Dude, I'm going to Yuba to get stationed there." I was like, "Yuba, that's like right where I live. What's there?" They're like, "Beale." I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. What is it? Is that a word?" They're like, "There's an Air Force base there." I was like, "Never knew that." But yeah, so I get SERE. The recruiter doesn't know much. He didn't lie to me, as from what we found out during team. Some do, or inflate what SERE does. And so he was just, I think he just told me in the general, like, "You're in the woods, you're like a camping person." I was like, "Oh, that's not too bad.
I can do that."
But yeah, I passed the test and then just waited in depth. And then the way I got into basic was like, my recruiter's like, "Hey, this guy broke his leg. Are you ready to go?" And I was like, "Whoa, sure, I guess."
Yeah, love it.
I was like, "Sorry, dude, your leg broke, but I don't know you."
You owe that
guy.
You owe him.
Yeah, I know. I got to figure out who that guy was. Then we get into SERE, man. So for those that may not know, explain to them what SERE is. You're still doing it. You're still crushing it. Yeah. Tank.
He's in the zone over there. So SERE, the primary focus of SERE is personnel recovery. Like, that's the number one mission set. And it's what we focus everything we do on, is helping an isolated person get returned, right? Whoever that person might be. So yeah, that's what really drives everything. And in addition to that, it's train the people for isolation, or to be behind enemy lines or in a tough situation, whatever, where they can't affect their own recovery. Like, we're designed to help be a solution to all that, to prepare the person for that and to coordinate recovery efforts in order to bring that person out. both from a government military perspective, as well as like an embassy environment or something like that. So yeah, that's really what drives everything that we do. But yeah,
what do you think about tech school, man? Let's drop in some tech school stories, leadership stuff. What?
Yeah, dude.
Let's see what we remember. I remember a little bit. I remember starting to work out with you. You were one of the first people, and I remember specifically on incline bench is I think what we always used to do.
Yeah.
I came in the bubble, tiny young kid, and I considered you guys like my dads of the team, like you, Foray.
Right.
Like literally my dad.
It's true, man. It was certainly a paternal or a big brother role for sure. Yeah, and I loved it, dude. That was great. But yeah, so I was a 2 selection dude. I did 2 selection courses. The first one, I'll spare the details on that one, but the second one was great, right? So that's where I really got to link up with a vast majority of the team, so that by the time we made it up to Fairchild, it was great. I knew a fair bit of people, and then we get up there, and yeah, that was just eat, sleep, and get huge, and train your faces off, right?
Because you were early preteen, right? When you got Fairchild? Okay, that's what I thought. I remember there were a couple guys on the team, like you, Reinhold, who were on preteen for like almost a full 6 to 4 months before we started team.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so by the time I got up there, let's see, like Danny, Reinhold, Noriega was on my first selection.
Okay.
Wheeler, all those dudes were out there. Paul Merck was on my second team. I think, Dittmer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was a good batch. Jago was already up there.
Yeah.
Old Jago, dude. Yeah. So yeah, it was good. So then by the time we finally make it up there and get your pants kicked in for all the pre-team stuff, old Britain running us through BS that felt just fake and made up, for the most part. By the time team actually started and we start doing all of our impro week and all the sleep deprivation, task saturation, not understanding what's going on, and Dan Jones getting removed from team for whooping cough.
Yeah. Whooping cough is what we say. So
yeah, whooping cough. I would say the impro week was brutal, right? And I was at a severe disadvantage because I was in base housing because I had a wife and kid at the time.
Yeah.
And everybody else just got to walk across the field into the dorms. I'm, 20-minute commute both ways.
Yeah, I remember you, Seaprish, because I did a lot of impro work in Seaprish's basement with him and Jones and another guy because Seaprish was married at the time. Jones was there for a little bit, but still married. He had a little kid.
Freddie Kite.
Yeah.
That street we lived on, Washington Street, that was amazing because it was, let's see, Foray, Merck, me, Kite, Seaprish just right around the corner. Luke was right there. So we were all right there, which made it super nice, right? But yeah, so I'd get home. And before I moved to Spokane, my storage unit that we had got completely robbed. So we had no furniture.
Oh, jeez.
So I had gone to the dorms and was stealing furniture, dude. Man. I was shoving it in my car and taking it to my house so that we had stuff to sleep on. I was taking egg crates.
You should have told me because my stuff was just sitting in my truck because I didn't have a room when I got to Fairchild in process as I started SV80 and then I started SERE Tech School the next week. I didn't even in process until after tech school.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like I literally was sleeping in somebody's room the first 2 nights and then I got there and then I went through SV80 because we had to go through SV80 before team. I went through SV80. I finally got a room. I think my stuff was still in my Nissan Frontier in the back. The next week we started team. And I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on. So we had like the vice versa roles.
That's hilarious, dude. I remember when I came home from FAM Sonny had outdoor furniture inside the house, right? So, because our neighbor was like, "Hey, you guys don't have any furniture?" My wife's like, "No, we don't." And they were like, "Hey, you can take our patio furniture." So she took that in the house. I think they gave us a futon as well. So that was like almost a month into team before we even had a bed. And my daughter,
And then how old was your daughter? What was your daughter, like a couple years or?
She was let's see. She was born in 2000. She was 2.5 years old at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I had like fashioned for a bed.
Now with a 2-year-old.
Oh, dude, I had cut up egg crates and then wrapped it in sheets so it was kind of like dipped down so that she could sleep on that.
Jeez.
We had like a 13-inch TV VCR combo that we would just sit and watch that and do nothing else, dude. It was awful. It was so bad. But yeah, so we were doing that. It was definitely reverse roles because I didn't have a room at the dorms either, like they do now.
Yeah.
But yeah, team really started to take off. FAM, then mobile, medical, or we did mobile or medical in between FAM and mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those listening, SERE Tech School is a 6-month long, train in every biome situation. So for us, when we went through, they're all broken up into phases, and you have like an academic portion of the phase where you would learn like in a classroom, like here's what goes on in the Arctic, right? Here's how you do this. Here's what goes on in the jungle. And then I think we always had to take a test, which was like a paper test. And I remember there was that. And then we'd go out to the woods, or I say woods, but that biome and train. So in Washington, the reason why the SERE School is up there is because you can train in all the biomes associated with, any survival situation. We had Yakima for the desert. We had the Olympic National Forest for like the tropical rain environment. We had Tillamook Bay for the open ocean, which was horrible, miserable time for me. And then we had obviously the Colville National Forest, which simulated jungle, but a little bit of mountainous terrain and a little bit of everything else. And then after all of it, we got thrown to Alaska to go to cool school up there to simulate that. And then we go through our own little RT session as well. So yeah, 6 months, which is really like 8 or 9 because the extra, like our team went through the first peacetime governmental hostage class to test it. Then we had to go through Alaska after. So it was like added on training.
Yeah, it just compiles. In total, there's 11 phases in that 6-month period. And there's roughly
11? Damn, that's crazy.
Dude, it is crazy. And in that 6-month phase, there's roughly 75 to 80 days spent in the field.
Okay.
So
because you went back as SST, right?
I did, yeah. I was cadre for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the best job in the world.
Nice.
But yeah. And then for even greater context, for each class that runs, it runs twice a year. There's roughly 1,500 candidates for each course. And between the early entry selection phases, evaluation phases, and the start of a team, it gets whittled down to in the ballpark of 60 to 45. Mm-hmm. And then what graduates from that is typically 35 to 50%, depending.
Yeah.
So in the grand scheme of things, 1,500 to 30 or 25, whatever graduates, is pretty substantial.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you struggle with through team, man? Like, what were some of the struggles you had? Obviously, you came in with a little more experience on your shoulders, so you had that mentality. I don't think we had a phase together. I was talking to this about Pitcher too. Not Pitcher, but Jago, and I don't think we did. Or did we? Did we do the last phase together?
I'm trying to think. Everything starts to blend together so much. But yeah, I'm sure we had something together somewhere in there. Because 6 months is a long time not to have. I think I had a phase with just about everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely remember linking up with you during Evasion and talking to you on Evasion. And like running into the different travel teams during that phase was hilarious, dude. I absolutely loved it. Especially when I saw Eric Beatty. I thought he's quitting. He's gonna
Yeah, 'cause
quit.
I think you'd ask him like, "Did you get caught?" Or did they get you? Because obviously you don't know if somebody else
Yeah.
did, and they're either like super petrified or scared to even talk to you, or just like,
Yeah. So for some context on the evasion phase, it's I think it's roughly 10 days in the field, right? And they put us on the back of this helicopter and flew us out to the middle of nowhere and dropped us off and simulated an in-flight emergency, like the helicopter's crashing, we're in hostile territory, grab everything you can and stay in your travel teams and beat feet out of here, with the understanding that there are people actively looking for you, right? So we had the Army National Guard out there, we had Border Patrol, we had all the other graduated SERE guys, SERE specialists that had already been through. They're coming out there, they're assisting, all the cadre. Like, it is a full court press of everybody wanting to get out there, because this is their opportunity to like pay it back,
Yeah.
They're like, I got destroyed while I was out here. I want to make sure they have the same experience, right?
Yeah.
Some people will call that hazing. I call it effective training. So we were amply motivated to get through that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it was October time frame. There was certainly snow out there in some places. It's getting cold deep in the mountains of the Colville National Forest, right? Northern Washington, not far from the Canadian border. So yeah, and then you're just out there. You had 3 MREs to cover you for the entire duration, right? So 9-10 days, however long it was. And you are normally things that you would pull out of the MRE and throw in a fire or dig a hole and bury it. Those things are not getting left behind. You're opening those barbecue packets.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I'm going to pour that under my tongue and soak this up. I'm eating straight barbecue sauce. Just squeeze that into my mouth. And that's, I think that's the first time that I've slept that close to another man,
Yeah.
in like a 3-spoon situation and just rotating positions so you don't freeze to death and die. Because they didn't give us like sufficient clothing either. We were in a flight suit and like a t-shirt and underwear and boots, and it would get below freezing. So you're just sitting there and you're just holding your buddy, just trying to soak up any bit of heat from that person. You're like, oh, please, I'm going to die out here, not sleeping at all. And then you hear people like rustling around and you're just like, don't breathe. I don't want them to see the smoke from my breath. Just please don't find me. And then there was the ambush where everybody or most everybody got caught, because we had to make the radio calls and they're like, yeah, navigate to this point. There's going to be resupply or whatever.
And then you look around and you're like, why is everybody else here? This is awkward.
Yeah. You're like, hey, dude, no. So I remember when we got caught at that point, my travel partners were Scott Price and Scott Perlick. Yeah.
Okay.
And me. So they separated Scott Price right away. And it was me and Perlick. And what was funny was, just before this phase started, there was a playground behind my house, and I was out there playing with my daughter. And there was another dude out there who I had never met, and his kids playing on the playground with her, and they're just having a good time. And he and I are chatting, we're BSing, we're not talking about anything, just our kids playing on the thing. So fast forward, I have this hood on my head, and I'm on my knees in the snow, right? And I'm just sitting there, and I got my stupid flight suit on, my mechanic's flight suit, and my hood lifts up, and it's this dude who was just at the playground. And he was like, ah, crap, and puts the hood back, and walks away. So I'm kind of giggling under this hood, like, oh, that's pretty funny. Next time this hood rips off my head, it's Tao just hated me with a passion. And I don't know why, he just hated me. So anyway, he takes off the hood, and as my eyes start to focus in, I can see Perlick standing in the creek, and he's to his knees. He's still got his boots on. He's standing in the creek, right? And I was like, oh, crap, that looks crappy. And there's some mongoloid holding him in the water, And he was like, who is this guy? And I was like, I don't know. and wham, hits me right across my face. I fall over in the snow, and I'm like, oh, ears just ringing, you know. I was like, oh my gosh. He stands me back up, and he unzips my flight suit and pulls it down over my arms so I can't lift my arms up, you know. And I was just like, oh. He's like, who is that? And I was like, never seen him before in my life. Wham! Hits me again. And now I'm like a penguin lying in the snow, like trying to get up, but I can't because my arms are pinned, you know? And he stands me back up, and he was like, you guys are traveling together. I know you know what his name is. If you don't tell me who it is, I'm going to drop him down in the water. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. He's like, what's his name? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know who that is. I have zero awareness on any resistance techniques. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just like, don't say a freaking word, you know? So sure enough, they drop him down to his knees. So now that water's like below nipple height, you know? But he's in the water. He's in it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, if you don't tell me who it is, he's going to get hypothermia and die. I was like, I don't know who it is. And so then they put their arms underneath his arms, and they make him kick his legs out. So then it's just his head in the water. It's like, ooh. And bear in mind, they had a kick in a hole in the ice so that they can get him in the water. So it's portions of it are below freezing, you know? So eventually he puts the hood back on me, zips me back up, you know, and stands me up in the snow. And then Perlich comes out. They have me link up with him, and I can feel his wet flight suit. And they walk us to the truck. And then Scott is there for some reason. I don't even know what happened to Scott Price.
Yeah.
They pull our hoods off, and it's Conant, and he's like, all right, boys, let's get you dried up. Get a fresh set of clothes on, and we're going to go drop you off again. And from that point on, we're like, no way. I just got smoked in the face like 3 times. I am not trying to do this again. And Scott Price is like, I didn't think it was that bad. I'm like, you're an idiot. I don't even know where you were, dude. Yeah. Eating grilled cheese in a tent somewhere. And Scott Perlich is like, oh my gosh, dude, I hated that so much. But yeah, so they went and dropped us off eventually. Yeah, and that point on, we didn't get caught again, but we came across so many other travel teams. And Beatty specifically, when we rolled up, I think it was Beatty and remember the cross trainee Jones, the tall weird dude who'd always tickle his face with the pen so he wouldn't fall asleep in class. And it was I think those two were travel partners. And Beatty was holding his knees, sitting on the side of this hill with his head on his hands. And I was like, bro, what's up, dude? And he's like, I've been caught like 4 times, so I can't do this anymore. I was like, no way, dude. There's no way I'm getting caught. He's like, I think I'm really messed up, dude. I think I need to get out of here. And I was like, just quit.
Go do it.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and then we made a diligent effort to like not link up with other teams, to be so far away from everybody, make it extremely difficult to come catch us or find us. And yeah, we never got caught again, which was great.
Yeah, I think so. We didn't get caught. It was me, Luke, and somebody else, I think. And I think it's because we got lost. Because I remember there was a point where we saw nobody, dude. Like, literally nobody. And we were like, are we even in the right area?
Are we in Canada?
I literally think we were lost. I don't think nobody knew where we were. We were just aimlessly walking around. So people would be like, I've been caught like 3 times. And we're like, we haven't heard anybody. Like, we don't know.
We had a big class.
We linked up with a couple people right at the rally point. I think it was at the end where we got taken, I think, to the where you got brought in. Then you got to the city part. Yeah. But we were like, people were like, yeah, man, there are people everywhere and all this. And me and Luke were like, what do you guys, we're just like moving around. Yeah. I literally think we were lost. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Not even doing evasion movements. Yeah. You're just like walking.
Dude, we're just like, this isn't that bad. We were like quiet, but we'd meet people and they'd be like, you know, just like you sound like being like petrified, you know, and we're like, oh, hey, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Those are good times for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the biggest moment that stands out was Coastal. Going out in that damn freaking little dinghy where we're in the bottom floor of it in our poopy suits where it's like 80, 90 degrees, one little window, going out in the middle of the ocean, and I'm already getting sick about to throw up.
Yeah.
We get out, thrown on these stupid 20-minute life rafts. As soon as we hit the dock, I'm throwing up, man, just like nonstop whatsoever. Dry heaving face. Like I come up to breathe, I would throw up, and the water would come back up in my face. So I'm like throwing up in the ocean, and I'd come back up. And I just remember like this is how I go. This is it. This is where I just don't make it. You know, I just wake up.
Run. You know, I lived a good life up to this point. I'm fine with going now. Yeah, you're so miserable. Yeah, I hated that. We, I don't know if Jago told you. I think Jago was in my element that we had to. If he already told me this, if he already told you this story, feel free to stop me. But we were the element that had thrown back all the stuff.
Oh yeah, he did. He said that story. Yeah. Because then they come back, right?
Yes, dude. When we popped up on that hill, it looked like a scene out of Saving Private Ryan. It is just gooey ducks and conkles and everything. We're like, oh no, we're in so much trouble.
One of my fondest leadership memories was I failed so much stuff, man. I was horrible at carrying use. I remember Sergeant Foster or Fisher yelling at me. All I could see were his ear hairs coming out of his ears. And I'm just staring at these things like, I don't know what you're saying, dude, but I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, I hope I never get that old that I have ear hair just sticking out.
I was just like, I got this. Just don't quit.
Did you, were you ever like element leader for a phase?
You know, I think I was during mobile for a little bit of a section.
That's a tough one.
I think that was about it. Other than that, SERE, man, like, so what I learned between SERE and my TAC-PO assessment, SERE, you could be the gray man, right? Like you could be a pretty good gray man in SERE, which is sort of the role I tried to fit in as that little guy, just like hide behind people, do what you got to do, just don't die or don't quit. Really was the main mentality. So I never really put myself out there that much, you know. Like I look back at SERE and from what it taught me, from where I came from, was just that not quit mentality, which is what I took to heart. You know, it was like just don't quit. They can do whatever they want. They can yell at me. They could write me up, but because they, you know, like back then, and I don't know if it's still like that, like they were waking you up every day. Do you want to quit? Do you want to quit? Do you want to quit? You can quit. You can quit. You can quit. I'm like, man, that sounds pretty enticing, dude. Like you guys, you say it like it happens a lot, but then you see it happen, man. Like we had a person quit on the last day.
Yeah. Right.
The last day we get on that bus before we go to solo, Loftus, he's like, I think he just said he didn't want to get off the bus or something. He was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
We're like, bro, like this is all we have left.
This is it. Yeah. Yeah. And the solo, like they're bushing your quit on the solo.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, you made it. You're there. Yeah. That was wild. So I was an element leader on integrated.
Okay.
And you know, the combination of static teaching text versus integrating everything we learned and hitting the trail. And Mortensen was cadre. And I hated having Mortensen because he would critique you on how to teach and he had zero charisma. You know, that dude was so monotone and so dry. I absolutely hated it. So when he would give me criticism and feedback, I'm like, what? How can you critique that? Because you're awful at this, you know? But I remember one morning, well, it was the morning after what I call the Great Slaughter. And I'll just leave it at the Great Slaughter because it's probably not. You probably have PETA hop on here and destroy you. But needless to say, all the killing implements that they had us improvise were put to good use. And so the next day, the camp was destroyed, right? There is feathers and fur and burnt carcasses everywhere. And I was like, we have to get rid of all this stuff and we got to clean these cook kits. They showed up early and it was Rayum and Mortensen. And they rolled in and Mortensen just starts lighting us up. And that night, Bobby Goss had stuck a Leatherman through his finger, right? He was like trying to make a bowl and was like stuck that knife all the way through there. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was just a mess, right? It was the confluence of every possible thing that could go wrong, went wrong for sure. And so I remember just standing there and he's yelling at everybody. And I was like, hey, Sergeant Mortensen, like, this is my fault. You know, trying to take accountability, trying to take responsibility of everything that had happened. And he just lit into me. You know, you're a terrible leader. You're blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, gosh, dang, this is really good feedback. But I don't like how I'm receiving it, you know, making me feel so terrible. But at the same moment, it was like pretty rewarding because it took the heat off of everybody else. And I was like, okay, if it means like I'm the only dude that's taking heat right now, that's great. All right. If it means that I get pulled or kicked out, so be it. But like it was an opportunity to stand up or to step up and fill that role. And it was rewarding in that fashion. So I appreciated that. Yeah. Oh.
All right, let's bring in. We'll fast forward to where you are now. Looking back, what are some leadership traits that helped you develop that you've seen as a senior NCO in the military now, from young A1C airman pitcher? You know, where did you learn leadership? How does it apply now? What sprinkles of tidbits do you got there?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure you heard this before, but every leader, supervisor that you have, there's something to glean from it, negative or positive and otherwise. And so my first supervisor was Ryan Sherwood, right? A fellow teammate, but a cross trainee.
Yeah.
And so whenever I reflect on great supervisors that I had, he's always the first name that pops into my head, right? Because we were at the same, for all intents and purposes, we were in the same position within our careers, trying to upgrade to 5 level and so on. And whenever there was an opportunity that came up, like flight chief would be like, hey, we have this going on. Sherwood would always be like, hey, pitcher, let's throw pitcher on there. Throw pitcher on there. He always put me and his other dudes ahead of himself, you know, and that's a difficult thing in our career field because not everybody gets the same opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. There's no 2 career paths in the SERE community that are the same. Mm-hmm. And so, and Ryan understood that, but he didn't care. Right. He knew that I'm going to put my dudes before me and I'll get mine when when possible. So that was all good, man. That was a big learning experience for me. Right. Because when everything's so competitive, and you're constantly looking for an edge in order to like improve your position, right? Always be improving your position. Mm-hmm. He didn't apply that to himself. He was like, how do I take care of the dude?
Down where you said, what was it you just said about take care? Was it take care? No, it was.
Yeah, I said like, always putting the needs of others ahead of your own.
Okay. Right? Yeah.
So that was a big one that I picked up on from him. Right? Or at least try to emulate the best I could. If I would take leave, I would come back, he would cancel it. You know, he's always just like trying to improve, not just professionally, but like he was considering multiple aspects of your life, right? Your home life. How can I improve that? Mm-hmm. How can I improve professionally? How can I do self-improvement? All those things, definitely looking out for us. So I love that. Like I learned so much from him. And I'm lucky enough now, he's retired, but he works in my building. So I get to see him all the time. And that mentoring connection is still there. I'm still picking his brain, still trying to learn from him because he was always so great at it, you know? And it's indicative of the man he is, but the career that he's had as well. Like he's amazing. Immediately following that, I went to Travis Air Force Base.
Yeah.
In which I had probably one of the worst supervisors I ever had. Also a cross trainee. But I won't say his name, but man, was he awful. And I won't say
Yeah.
his name for the purposes of me giving you context of the type of person that this guy was. Giving you the end, he was pulled out of that position, either forced to retire as the tech or to have charges brought up on him.
Dang.
So there was 4 charges in total, 3 sexual harassment, 1 sexual assault.
Jeez.
And yeah, this guy was just awful. Now, he was good to me, right? He took care of me. And Jago and I went to that assignment together. And anything I wanted, he was like, yeah, dude, get it, get it, get it. He was putting me in for different things. And Jago, he was not doing that for. Right? Jago, man, just got dumped on. The very first TDY that we had when we got there, it was a MAGCOM conference for SERE. And so Jago was at a very early stage in his marriage, and his family was coming out to visit them in California. And so he asked the supervisor, we'll call him Matt. He was like, hey, Sergeant Matt, am I going on this conference? Am I going on this TDY? And Matt's like, no, you're not going. And he was like, okay, cool. Because my family's coming in and I want to take leave while you guys are gone. And he's like, yeah, all good, man. Do your thing. Days before we're leaving, he comes back in and he's like, hey, Jago, you're going to the conference? And I can't go.
Oh,
and he was like, I already have my leave submitted. And my family bought their tickets from Philadelphia. They're flying to California. Like, it's not a cheap ticket. And it's really the first time that my family's going to be meeting my wife. And he was like, yeah, sorry, man, you're going. And you're just like, holy smokes, dude. And this guy, single, he was a tech sergeant at the time. Like, he didn't have any familial responsibilities. Like, he was just a single dude doing his thing and didn't let on anything, any engagements that he was worried about or anything like that. It was really, he just didn't want to go and did that. And that was just the tip of the iceberg for all the terrible things that he did while he was in that position, abusing power, making us do things that we should not be doing, fraud, waste, and abuse, like so many different things. And then mostly of all, like not treating your people well. So it was awful, right? And then Jago became resentful towards me because he sees me getting all these things and he's not getting into that. And where we ended up having a conversation and discussing it rather than letting it fester and boil and get worse. Like, we're teammates. We ended up having a discussion about it, but he was definitely the worst supervisor we ever had. And Jago and I dealt with it together in order to rectify the situation, but it was brutal. So yeah, that's kind of some early ones. And then up to this point, I recently had a really bad commander. Certainly one of the worst experiences I've had with a commander. And he let it be known that he hated the career field. And so that was really difficult because up to that point, we had been making a lot of progress. So for context, SERE had not had a permanent presence in special tactics. And I was the first guy to go to special tactics back in 2012, first SERE guy outside of a certain organization. So like the general ones. And so that was 2012 and kind of trying to figure out the role for SERE within special tactics and how all that works. I then went back to Fairchild, back to the mothership, and I was cadre for SST. And then from there, I went back into special tactics to where I'm currently at now, where I got to further everything I initiated back in 2012 and keep that ball rolling. And what was good is that the leadership that I had once I came back was the same leadership I had at my first assignment within Special Tactics. So they knew exactly what I was trying to do. They were supportive of it, and we made massive progress really fast. And we were pushing the ball forward. We were filling a bunch of new assignments within that community, filling SERE guys into there. And when this new guy showed up, just halted everything because he didn't appreciate what SERE provides, you know? And it was for no other reason other than a bias that he had towards SERE, you know? And so that was a really tough one. And fortunately, he just left and we're starting to resume the path that we were on, but it was a long road to hoe for a while. Yeah.
What are some leadership traits you go by? So obviously for those listening, you know, I have my 4 that I've developed and structured really just past 3 years. And then I have a book with a bunch of them in there as well that I've procured. But do you have any off the top of your head that you sort of mold where you go when you're a supervisor that you establish as your key leadership traits, or is it pretty flexible?
So I would say there's a theme within my leadership. Hang on just a second. I'm going to turn on another light here.
Okay.
Does that help or is that worse?
No, it helps.
Okay. So the theme I would say is probably inspiration and motivation.
Yeah, that's what I would. Yeah. Like if you were to ask me to tell me what I think your leadership traits are, I would say approachable. Like you've always been super approachable. Like since I've known you, and that role that I saw you as was approachable. You're always just someone to talk to. And I super appreciated that when I was younger, trying to, I guess, become someone in the Air Force, you know, like do that. You're super approachable outside and inside of work. You're always motivating. And that, you know, that was like my very limited scope of your, obviously I say your leadership, but at that time, I don't even know if we had really leadership skills. Then it was just like,
right.
get through to the next day. But from what I remember seeing and from our relationship, it's been that approachable, you know, just like someone like, heck, I could reach out to you right now and be like, dude, you want to get on a podcast and chat? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, cool, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, man. But that's, I think being approachable is that probably the number one most important thing, right? Because if people feel like they can't talk to you, like how are you going to get through to anybody? Why would they listen to you otherwise?
Yeah.
Right? So, and as cheesy as it sounds, how would you like to be treated? Mm-hmm. Right? I don't necessarily believe in like treating people in line with what their position might be perceived as. Right? Yeah. I don't use the term subordinate. I don't use the term superior. I just say coworkers, right? Or dudes that I work with, right? Regardless of who it is, I don't care what your rank is or your position is. That's a dude I work with, right? We're all just working together. That's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's what SERE ingrained in all of us, that leadership style.
Right.
If we're working with people, no matter who you are, I'm working with you. Like, we built a bond as a team, no matter who we were at the time, young, old, experienced, good, bad. Like, and I see that leadership in my philosophy as well, as far as like when I go to a place on the officer side now, when I was a flight commander, I didn't see like superiors or, you know, I saw a team in AFE when I was a flight commander. And that's just how I grew up in the military as well. Like a team doing this, a team doing that. Now, there were people around me who didn't get the concept yet because they were young airmen, so they didn't know how to have a relationship with an officer. But I was able to break that and be like, look, we're all doing this together. Like, there will be a time where I may have to be an officer and you may have to be an airman when it comes to paperwork or stuff like that. But when I'm here, just like you said, we're doing the same job, get the same thing done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that promotes a really good environment that people want to be in, and it's motivating as well, right? nobody's being asked to do something that the other wouldn't do.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
That's established over time and through deed and actions, not through conversation. Right? So being able to, I guess, set an example or to demonstrate that, like, again, I don't care what your position is, there's things that need to be done, we just do them. And I'd relate that back to me being a kid that I kind of highlighted on earlier with my dad. Like, nobody's too good for any job. If there's something that needs to be done, you just do it. Like the whole lift with your airman thing, like, nah, man, I don't believe in it. I don't care what the task is. If I can do it, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. But I will say that one of my weak points is delegation. Yeah. Right? I don't delegate very well. And I guess you could kind of call it that a developmental technique as well. I guess it's probably what I've pulled away from my weakness, is that there is some opportunity in that. So that if I am doing something, the dudes I work with, that gives them an opportunity to observe what's going on. And if they have nothing going on and they know that I have multiple things, for them to be like, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. Let me take that off your plate. Yeah. That to me means so much more to me than if I give somebody a task and they execute it. Yeah. That's more rewarding to me from, I guess, a leadership perspective, right? Yeah. I want the dudes to have the initiative and to be motivated and to be bought in on everything that we're doing. Now that all starts with
that's tough.
Yeah, dude. That's incredibly difficult.
Because I've worked with pretty young airmen being a flight commander, where that's hard.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of trust in those people around you to know if you're doing something, for them to initiate the support.
Yeah. Right. And so what I will say is that just doesn't happen over time. Right.
No. Yeah. It doesn't happen like,
yeah. So that's when I kind of lean on the earlier pieces of inspiration and motivation.
Yeah.
So
it's just a building block.
Absolutely. So when new dudes come in, or whenever I go into a new work environment, it's helping people understand, like, this is how I get work done.
Yeah.
So establish what that purpose is, right? So, for example, at this assignment here that I'm in, actually, let's go to SST, right? So the schoolhouse for SERE. When I stepped in as cadre, for the most part, cadre are new guys that are coming over, right? They've never had an assignment outside of Fairchild, and they move into SERE selection and become cadre. For me, I had 2 assignments away from Fairchild. So I went to Travis, then I went to Mildenhall, and then came back to Fairchild, and I stepped in as cadre, right? And so when I first got there, I was relatively new to that role, trying to get my feet underneath me, but I'm in a leadership position because it's predominantly new guys. And I guess I'm a senior guy at that time, even though I felt like still just a newbie. So I immediately get dudes assigned to work together, and was like, hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do here. There's a culture within here that I want to preserve. Right. And that culture is, we work freaking hard. We want to do our job, and we need to be able to rely on each other. We're trying to preserve a culture. We're trying to establish who we are, right? And that we work hard all the time, and that we can rely on one another because we're teammates here, right? And so with that understanding, being reliable, that means that if I'm asked to do something, that I'm going to execute it to the best of my ability. And that if I ask you to do something, you're going to execute to the best of your ability. And I can expect it to get done without having to ask any questions, follow up. I just expect it to be done, right? The benefit is the dudes that come to be cadre want to be there. There's the interview process, like it's not an easy position to get into, but if you're there, you want to be there. But with that understanding, trying to motivate them into respecting those positions, and that's something I can relate to. That's something I also want to preserve as the person receiving that information. That's my groundwork, right? That's that motivate, inspire piece. So then now it's deed and actions, right? I can say all those things, but if I don't demonstrate those same things and it doesn't look like I'm pushing in that direction, you've lost all faith, right? They have no faith in you. But your deed and actions demonstrates like, hey, he doesn't care what the job is. It's just getting done. I want to do the same thing. And then the fear of letting each other down is pretty great, right? If you're not fearful of letting somebody down, I think that's a pretty powerful tool, motivational tool. Mm-hmm. Not that it's like emotional manipulation, but like it's emotional investment.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah. So, I think your deeds and actions ties right into lead by example, right? Like that's like my number one thing. And it just ties right into that. Your deeds are your actions, and leading by example is doing things to, that's what I put. I was like, oh man, because when you're saying deeds and actions, I was like, man, it sounds really familiar. And the more you talk about it, I was like,
that's relatable.
Sounds like he's just saying leads by example. But I was like, okay, cool, nice. That worked.
Yeah, very similar. I think that's a super important one, right? Yeah. And then the thing that I try to glean from Sherwood was just taking care of the dudes, right?
Yeah.
What can I shelter them from and what can I shower them with?
Yeah.
Right? So shelter and shower principle, if you want to call it something.
I like that.
I got to keep these guys protected from stray voltage, right? Somebody trying to give them additional tasks or any issues or trouble that they might be experiencing. How can I relieve that? How can I be that person that they come to talk to so that I want them to feel comfortable to be able to talk to me? And I want them to feel like I can help them with this, right? So I'm going to do everything I can to help them with that issue. And then what can I shower them with? Like what motivates the dudes, right? Is it time off? Is it acknowledgement through awards or whatever? Is it public acknowledgement? Do they prefer it in private? Whatever it is. Like what motivates these guys? Is it food? Whatever, right? It's something. You just got to figure it out. And most times if you ask them what it is, it's probably not going to be accurate, right? You have to pay attention to who they are and what puts a smile on their face, right?
Nice. I like that.
So it's an active role, right? You can't just stand back and hope you're going to figure it out because you won't.
Yeah.
Or you'll be wrong. So
that's good, man. I love that. Yeah. All right. What book do you got, or do you recommend? What are you reading? Do you read? What do you got?
Yeah. So I do a little bit of reading. I think more appropriate. I do a little more audible, right?
Okay. I won't end the call or anything, so you're good.
Yeah. You know what? This isn't going where I wanted it.
Wait, can you hear me? It's cutting out. Like.
Yeah. Oh no. Good talking to you. Bye. So I focus more on communication books, right? Nice. Less on leading. My degree is in leadership, and I don't feel like I completely agree with everything I learned through the leadership degree. I find more value in communication.
Yeah.
So now it's really a couple things. A big one is Never Split the Difference, right? Which is a negotiation book. Chris Voss is the writer. And then the Art of Social Engineering by Chris Hadnagy. So take it for what it's worth, right? Negotiation, it all boils down to communication, right? And it's understanding what motivates people. And the way I look at that is being able to advocate for yourself, your program, your people, not necessarily in that order. But if I'm going to try to get approval to do something or to get something across the goal line or a way that I can take care of my people in some way, like you better know how to negotiate, right? Because the first answer is not always yes, right? So how do we get there? So understanding how to communicate in a way that is going to get buy-in. So that's the negotiation piece for Never Split the Difference. And then the Art of Social Engineering, a lot of people would call that like manipulation. But with communication, there's a lot of manipulation that takes place. And if it means that I have to utilize those tools that you learn in that book in order to take care of my people better, it's what I'll do. Right. But never with ill intentions, right? Yeah. Obviously. So those two are awesome, right? And those are books that I listen to over and over, right? It's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I can go through. I think I've been through the Art of Social Engineering like 3 times at this point, which is like a 18-hour book on Audible. Shit. Yeah. So I really enjoy that one. And I always share that with the dudes I work with. Like, hey, if you're on Audible, you got to listen to this thing. And everybody takes something away from it, which is awesome.
Nice.
So what about you?
Yeah.
What do you got?
The one I have on my phone, and I don't have a lot on my phone because I do a lot of hardback, but it's one I always have available in case I'm just like trying to teach people and show them, is Atomic Habits. A very simple book.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only ones I have on my phone because like there are so many quotes in there where I'm just like, I don't have the book on me. And it's the page I always have it saved on is you surround yourself with, you build your habits by 3 people you surround yourself with: the successful, the many, the close. And if those people in your life, and the way they break it down is the close are like people you work with, right? So your shop. The many could be like your family or the Air Force. And then the successful could be neither of those, but that's how you build your habits. And that's like one of my favorite lines from that. There's tons of them in there, habit stacking, etc. But since I've developed pretty decent routines and habits and structure, it's just a good book. And it's just like you said, it's a book I usually recommend to people right away, where it's like, hey, what do you think I should start doing? Well, one, it's like, here's an easy book. It's an easy read. It's an executable book. So I read like the executable books, then the books I read on like more thinking, like biographies and stuff like that. But Atomic Habits is a good one because you can just take it and apply it. Like, boom, go put it
right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's those 2 books that I mentioned is very practical, and there's an application piece to it where you can implement it. Where you're talking about Atomic Habits, it seems like it's very similar, right? Like these are the steps you can take in order to improve whatever. Yeah. So self-improvement, I really do enjoy. So I'll read those, and then I read, I guess, military history and those sort of things too.
My wife said I'm now officially old because I care about military history. Like I just got like a Napoleon concise book, which was pretty good. His biography, like a concise one. I got a Winston Churchill book, so I have to read that one here soon. And with my son, really big in like military. We've been like diving into like World War II battles and stuff like that. And so it's been
That's awesome. There's a book that I'm had my eye on here for a little bit, waiting for credit to pop, but the Marcus Aurelius book here. I'm trying to remember what it is. It's a very like Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up because I can't remember the name of it right now. It might be called Meditations, but yeah. Yeah, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and George Long translation. But it's a lot of that, like what processes did he use? What did he do? It's pretty neat. I listened to the excerpts of it and I was like, that's cool, right? Yeah. Some self-improvement in there.
Good. All right. Do you have any last final words, my man? Or
dude, this has been great, dude. We don't get to catch up very often, so this has been awesome. No. Yeah.
That's why I like doing this, man. Like I tell a lot of people, one of the reasons I do the podcast, I get to talk to people I haven't talked to in a long time. Like, I don't know the last time. Well, last time I think we talked was because we didn't get to see each other this year during Pensacola, which we usually do. So I think it was the year last year where we saw each other at the beach. Yeah, but even that was awesome. Pretty short. It was like sit down, chat, and that's what I told Jago when we had this and other people I talked to. I'm like, one of the reasons I love this podcast is I get to reach out to people I haven't talked to in a long time and just talk to them.
Yeah, right. That's nice, dude. Yeah, it's been great. So I enjoy it. And thanks, dude. I appreciate you thinking of me. And yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, man, I'm glad to see you still crushing it. So,
thanks, dude. And you too. Super proud of you, man. From seeing you as little brother Lamb to who you are now, it's awesome. The growth has been incredible. So it's been a cool journey to watch, dude. So,
all right, man. Well, I'll let you get back to the evening. I don't know what my house looks like right now, so